Then on February 27th, I received the dreaded email informing, quote, the agency finds that you are not fit for continued employment because your ability, knowledge, and or skills do not fit the agency's current needs. This was a blatant lie. I was hired exactly for my highly specialized skill and knowledge, and my ability to perform the mission was clear, given the supervisor's praise and assessments. Additionally, there was no indication as to who chose to terminate me or why I was chosen. As a result of my termination, there's a possibility that the 2026 Cook Inlet stock assessment may not be conducted, risking that a newly court-ordered fishery may not proceed or proceed with outdated assessment numbers, potentially risking the health of the Cook Inlet stocks.
I was 5 months from completing my fourth 2-year probation when I was terminated. The letter claimed I did not meet performance levels and did not have the experience necessary for the job. The letter came from Washington, D.C. Clearly, they did not reference any of my superiors who would, if given the chance, speak in my favor. I've received only exceptional to outstanding performance reviews in my more than 20 years of service with Lake Clark. Lake Clark, Port Alsworth community I live in, is a very small community of less than 200 people. My wife and I bought land from my grandmother who was a native born there. We bought her native allotment. There is no employment opportunity in Port Alsworth that can make up for my loss of income. For me to do anything equal would force us to sell our land and relocate, which is the last thing I want to do.
I was born here in Juneau, Alaska 34 years ago. I went to school in Fairbanks for fisheries, and shortly after college, I got a job working at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I was 11 days from the end of my probationary period when I was terminated. My work at NOAA was comprised of two components. During field season, I provided survey logistics support for 2 different divisions within Ted Stevens Marine Research Institute. To briefly summarize my role in these surveys is basically the glue that holds it all together. Having done these surveys for 9 years, I've developed a wealth of experience operating all of the survey gears. I'm solely responsible for deploying complex electronic data collection systems. No one else at the lab has the experience to deploy that collection system. My termination was pretty unceremonious. The termination letter itself came from Vice Admiral Nancy Hand and cited that the agency no longer has need of my skills and or knowledge.
It sounds like no one that you work with would think that you should be terminated. Would that be a correct assessment?
Absolutely.
This person who sent the email, do you know that person?
No, current head of NOAA. We've had a lot of speculation on how this process was carried out, but the reality is it was carried out at the topmost level. They looked at names on a list and cut people.
Would you take your job back if it was offered back to you?
Oh yes, I fully intend to continue living here, and I absolutely have confidence that at some point in the future I'll be back at that facility.
Mr. Dimond, thank you so much for your service and for being here today, and I'm sorry for the way you were treated.
Approximately 3.2% of the labor force in Alaska are federal civilian workers. I think one thing to note here is that it's the 3rd highest, the first being Maryland, the second being Hawaii, and then Alaska. And this is just to note that Alaska is very reliant relative to other states on federal civilian workers. To go a little more in depth, I'm now going to look inside the state and think about federal employment. So in quarter 3 of 2024, employment of federal civilian workers in Alaska is the 9th largest sector in Alaska. So approximately 16,000 people have federal jobs. And I think to note, close by is natural resources and mining, manufacturing. And so this is still a relatively decent proportion of Alaska's economy.
Has there been an uptick that's been noticeable by you guys?
Chair Gray, absolutely. We get on average about 10 claims from federal employees a month previous to this. And as I mentioned, we're up to 138.
And then the second question, is there a potential maximum number the state can handle as far as unemployment?
So Chair Gray, I would say our trust fund, our unemployment trust fund, is overly solvent at this time. Our benefit costs could triple, and we'd be bringing in enough revenue to cover that.